This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remus.
What is going on, Winnipeg? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Great to have you all with us. And we've got a banger of a show today. There is lots happening around the National Hockey League right now. That take that I had yesterday, that we know who the sellers are and we know who the buyers are, and that might mean that things will take a little longer to percolate. Terrible take by me. There is a lot happening right now. We've got a number of trades so far. We're going to get into those in just a few minutes. We will look back to last night. Jets lose 4-3 to the Seattle Kraken in their final game before the trade deadline. And of course, we'll speak about the deadline as it pertains to the Winnipeg Jets. Who is off the board, what other teams have made moves, and what Chevy might be cooking as we get closer to Friday at 2 p.m. Unfortunately, Pat Steinberg was going to join us today, but Pat's got a voice issue, and when you work as much and as hard as he does, that's an issue. And of course, they've got lots going on in Calgary, but have no fear. Connor Hrabchak's going to be hanging out, and Connor and I are going to get into, basically, we're going to get into everything that's happening right now as we speak live for everyone joining us on YouTube with these recent trades. Then dive in a little bit more to last night's game, everything coming out of it. And then around 2 or so, for those of you watching on the live stream on YouTube, we will have Murat Ates join us to pick his brain on the latest on the Jets, where they stand heading into the deadline, as well as their play as of late. Listen, just before we kind of dive into everything, a huge thanks to the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Of course, our friends at Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Cool Bet Canada, the Winnipeg Jets, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Canadian Club, Modern Man Barber Shop, Manitoba Battery, and it is great to have our friends at Consolidated Supply back. Now, let's welcome in Remo away today. Shout out to Sarah, who's helping us hold it down and get the show out there for the people, the fine people of Winnipeg and Manitoba. Let's bring in the Wonder Boy himself, Connor Hrabchak, part of the WST team. And Connor, I was looking forward to having you on, but we're going to get even a little bit more of you today. But what a great day to do it together, because there is a lot going on. I kind of thought we'd spend the first half hour talking about the game last night. That's going to have to wait because there is a lot of activity right now in the National Hockey League. And I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to be as active right now. I thought that might be a little closer to the deadline, but teams are making moves and other teams are following. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I thought when you asked me that we were going to be covering trade deadline stuff, I thought that was Friday, but here we are with an extended Wednesday show, guests backed out, tons of trades happening. I'm fired up. This is like, when you're working in this industry, trade deadline week is like your Super Bowl. It's your Stanley Cup Finals. It's the busiest time of the year. It's the best time of the year, moving parts, and I'm fired up because hey, we're getting a trade deadline 2 days early here.
Well, it kind of feels like it. Like I'm not sure that even on Friday we'll have as much action as we've had just during. We had to cut the lock shop short because the Oilers made a trade and Dusty needed to fire up the oil stream, which was perfect because we had some stuff to do to get this stream ready today. But we will, by the way, be going live early, I think 11 a.m. on Friday, kind of our traditional extended trade deadline coverage. Connor will be with us. Obviously, Remo will be back. Mike and Jeff from the Free Press. We'll have, I think, a bunch of our regulars pop in and out throughout the day, speaking about what's happening on around the league, as well as the rest of the focusing on the Winnipeg Jets, of course. But yeah, I mean, we've got a lot to talk about. And I will say this, if today feels like deadline day and we kind of get into it, we have a contingency plan for the extended show on Friday. I can confirm that Remo today picked up a hobby box of the new Upper Deck cards with the Hunt for the Connor Bedard rookie. And we'll crack those packs throughout the show on Friday when we're waiting for things to happen. So Friday's going to be a lot of fun. Also, our 3rd anniversary. Cannot believe we're 3 years into this, but it has been so much fun. But it's fun doing shows on days like today. So in the last hour, well, in the last 2 hours, we've basically seen some pretty significant trades. I'm going to pull up this trade tracker. And let's start with around 11 a.m. today. We got the first news. Well, I should say, after we finished the program yesterday, the first domino fell. Anthony Mantha, who was a player that, many people in the Jets sphere had mentioned might look good on in that top 6 for the Winnipeg Jets. He was picked up from the Vegas Golden Knights in exchange for a 2nd-round pick this year and a 4th rounder in 2026. The Capitals are retaining 50% of Mantha's $5.7 million cap hit in the trade. So that was the first domino. Relatively quiet night. The games went on. And then at about 11 a.m. our time, we heard that Vlad Tarasenko was on the move to the Florida Panthers. And Connor, this was sticker shock, but in reverse. For a player like Tarasenko to go to the Panthers for a 2025 3rd rounder and a conditional 4th rounder that could become a 3rd rounder, and about as underwhelming a return as you could possibly think for a player of Tarasenko's resume. And then we found out he had a full no move, so could basically dictate where he would accept a trade to. Not a great start for Steve Stais and Pooley to sort of have their hands tied the way they did, but huge get for the Florida Panthers, who strengthened themselves on the top of the league over on the East with Tarasenko coming in. And disappointing for, I think, teams like Winnipeg. He was a guy that I would have loved seeing to come to the Jets. And I'm pretty sure the Winnipeg Jets and probably a lot of teams in the NHL would have been willing to give up more than 2 third-round picks for Vlad Tarasenko.
Yeah, it really is a shame that he had the full control of where he was going. And the Florida Panthers, I mean, their top 9 is arguably the best in the NHL right now. And they got even better getting Tarasenko for, basically 2 third-round picks. It's a 3rd and a 4th, and that 4th only becomes a 3rd if the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, which is very viable. Like, they're the number 1 team in the East. They're the number 1 team in the league. They're easily the team to beat on paper. Now, in years past, the team to beat on paper hasn't always won the cup, but they're the team to beat, especially in the Eastern Conference, never mind the entire league as a whole. But yeah, that really set the market. And now you're seeing a ton of trades roll in, which we'll get to here in a second. But I remember seeing that early this morning and thinking, wow, that only a 3 and a 4 for Vladimir Tarasenko. But then you realize, like you said, full no move clause, he could dictate where he was going, things of that nature. And great move for Florida. Great move for Florida. That's all I can really say. And yeah, underwhelming return on Ottawa's part, but Florida bolsters up and they're easily the team to beat in the East right now.
I mean, like, if you're a Sens fan right now, you're shaking your head. I mean, part of me says, you know what, Vlad, we're not trading you for 2 third-rounders. I mean, enjoy playing, getting ready for the lottery. I mean, at a certain point, you have to do it. I don't know, maybe they hold out a bit more. Anyways, they did it. They moved on. But I mean, for a rental player in Tarasenko with his resume and his production, compare what Ottawa got to what Kevin Cheveldayoff got out of the Rangers a couple of years ago for Andrew Kopp. I mean, it's, that conditional pick ended up being a 1st rounder that was Brad Lambert, another 2nd rounder, Morgan Barron. So, but again, that's a unique situation. Good on Tarasenko's agent. If they were going to sign a 1-year deal and be in that situation, they wanted to have some control on where he was going to go. They had it, and that really diminished what Ottawa was able to ask for. Shortly afterwards, well, basically in the last hour, while we were doing Lock Shop, Dusty was all of a sudden very preoccupied in the middle of our golf picks because the Oilers struck a deal with the Anaheim Ducks. Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick to the Ducks. And I guess it's being reported that there's a first-round pick from Edmonton going to Anaheim. I believe the Oilers' first-round pick was number 4 on the TSN trade bait board. So nobody's surprised that the Oilers were willing to send their first-round pick away. It sounds like there's a third-party team that is brokering this deal. Not all of the details are out right now, but Henrique was another player we'd kicked around as a versatile guy that could play certainly in your top 9. He's added in a little bit of fourth-line grit, if you will, a depth piece in Sam Carrick going for the Oilers, and that was their big chip to play, their first-round pick, and now that's gone to the Ducks.
Yeah, and I like this move for Edmonton. You know, you get 2 depth forwards. Henrique, honestly, is a good middle 6 center. A veteran who played in the playoffs a long time ago for New Jersey and hasn't been back since, but a veteran. They needed some scoring punch, especially down the lineup. Everyone knows McDavid and Draisaitl are going to do special things offensively, but they needed depth down the lineup. And I was listening to Mark Spector on the Jeff Merrick show just half an hour ago before we jumped on here, and he was saying that he would be shocked if Ken Holland is done after this move. He thinks that they're going to look to add a defenseman. Philip Broberg is currently the Oilers' 7th defenseman, and what Mark Spector was saying, basically what I took away from what he was saying, is that the Oilers don't trust him to be the 7th defenseman. We know how many injuries there are in the playoffs, especially to defensemen, and if he had to step in to play 15 to 17 minutes a night, they're not sure if he could really handle that role. So I'd look for the Oilers to continue to add and maybe even add a depth defenseman after this, but this is a good start for them, I think, getting depth forwards, because that's exactly what they've needed the entire McDavid era. And they used, again, number 4 on TSN's trade board, their first round pick. They used their big chip.
We always used to joke about how, like, there was a couple teams first rounders. The Jets first rounder was out there last year, and then Coyotes cap space. That was always on the trade bait board as well. Well, and cap space is a big part of it. And again, we can't talk about trades with involving teams like the Oilers without talking about the cap. They have been, playing with not a full roster for a good portion of the season, trying to get into a better cap situation. On the surface, this would basically be they're done with this deal. They're going to be right up against it. But now we've heard there's 50% retention and a potential third party as well. And once the third party gets in there, I guess for 25%, maybe there is the opportunity to get another league minimum or lower price depth defenseman for the Edmonton Oilers. So, the Oilers make their move, but then things got really wild. The Avalanche, and this is of most interest to people here in Winnipeg and for everybody in the Central Division, been waiting to see what the Avalanche did to bolster their lineup. They're not as deep as they were when they won the Cup. I think they knew they needed to make some moves, and they've done exactly that. First off, they trade with the Philadelphia Flyers, and this is a very interesting trade. Sean Walker, sounds like Nick Seeler might be signing an extension with Philly, but Sean Walker's on the move to the Colorado Avalanche, and I think considering their need for a center, that got people's spidey senses going that maybe this is the first of a couple moves, and that's exactly what the case was. Sean Walker and a 5th-round pick go to the Colorado Avalanche in return for Ryan Johansson and the 2025 first-round pick of the Colorado Avalanche. So Philly continues to build for the future, albeit for a team that is in the playoffs right now. But they do get Johansson, who can come in and potentially help the Philadelphia Flyers. They've got to make up for the loss of Walker on the blue line. But it does feel like the Flyers are sort of playing with house money right now, and they're going to still make this big push for the playoffs, but that has not taken them off the course, which was building for a number of years in advance. And they took advantage of an expiring asset in Sean Walker and turned it into a first-rounder and a guy in Johansson that might very well be able to help them down the stretch.
And Johansson, I think, was the reason you said, like, people's spidey senses were going off. Like, is Colorado going to make a move here? they needed a second line center, and then they moved off of one of their centers in this deal. And it was like, well, that if you have a hole at center and you trade, like Ryan Johansson, they brought in the offseason, he was going to be their second line center for the entirety of the season. Now I think it's been him, it's been Ross Colton, it's been kind of a revolving door there. And then obviously we'll get into the next trade in a second, which was the biggest trade of the day. But they fill that need shortly after. But the first round pick goes out, Ryan Johansson goes out, Philly immediately. I believe they put Johansson on waivers, if I'm not mistaken. I thought I saw that because he has a very high cap hit. I believe it's $8 million. So Johansson, maybe they could be he could be a player for Philly down the stretch. Maybe someone claims him if they. I don't think that's going to happen. But Colorado gets Walker. Seeing Johansson go out the door was definitely a sign like, hey, there's something else coming here. Everyone knew Colorado was still going to add up front, and that's exactly what they did. We can talk about that next trade now, because that was the biggest trade of the day and the real sign that trade deadline season is here.
Yeah, the cap hit actually on Johansson is $4 million, because I think Nashville, when he was originally traded, had half of it on the books.
Right. Okay.
Now, I mean, it's just as far as Johansson goes. He's now with Philly. This year, in 63 games, he scored 13 times. He had 23 goals. I mean, it's pretty clear he's a bit of a shadow of the guy that was, that top pick in Columbus and was a massive part of that Seth Jones trade earlier on in his career. The first round pick was what Philly was looking for. And as I said, we'll see what that means for Johansson when it comes to Philadelphia down the stretch and waiver availability. But yes, that was just the start of what Colorado was cooking up. So they get Sean Walker, and you think, is something going on with the blue line? We know the Avalanche need a center. And this is not a buyer's, a seller's trade. This is a straight up hockey deal of two highly touted, effective young players. Bowen Byram, who played so well the last couple of years, has had a bit of a rougher season. Bowen Byram is now on the Buffalo Sabres in a 1-for-1 straight up trade for Casey Middlestat, a player that we'd heard that Buffalo was taking calls on. I mean, at one point this year, he'd been the leading scorer of the Buffalo Sabres. I'm not sure if he still is. But this is interesting, and you wonder what's next to come for Buffalo, Connor, because they're not a playoff team right now, but I think they realize they need to significantly change up their roster and their roster makeup. They've got Owen Power. They've got Rasmus Dahlin. I mean, 2 number 1 picks making big, big money, and now move a talented young center playing in their top 6 for another defenseman drafted in the top 5 of the draft.
Yeah, and this was a crazy deal. You said it off the top there, though, but Byram has been struggling this year. He's had concussion issues his whole career. Super talented defenseman. Really, when he came into the league, took it by storm and ran with the opportunity. He was great. He's been declining the past 2 seasons. This year, he kind of hit a low point. And if you're Colorado, I mean, Nathan MacKinnon is in his prime, and you just paid him $13 million or whatever the final number was. So you want to win in that window. Cale Makar, you want to win in that window. Devon Taves, I believe, is 30 or 31 years old. And you are running out of opportunities here. So can you wait for Bowen Byram to re-find his game? He's still young. I believe he's 21 or 22 years old. But are you going to wait for him to find his game over the next 3-4 years when McKinnon and Makar and these guys are that much older? Or you're going to trade for an impact second line center right now in Casey Middlestat? And that's what they did. And I love hockey trades like this, just 1-for-1. And it makes sense from both sides. I mean, Buffalo needed to shake things up. They can take a shot on a high ceiling defenseman like Byram and maybe have one of the best defense corps in the league 3 years from now. When you talk about Dahlin, you talk about Power, you talk about Bowen Byram now, and then Colorado. I mean, this helps them right here, right now. And with the addition of Walker, I think they're the most improved team at the deadline right now. Obviously 2 days to go, and you don't want to hear that if you're a Jets fan. Colorado Avalanche are the most improved team at the deadline, but you add Walker and Middlestat, 2 glaring holes that they had, top 4 right D and a second line center. Colorado once again is going to be a force in the playoffs, and I love the moves that they made here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you pay a price with the first round pick, and obviously a guy that was brought Byram fourth overall, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, a huge part of
Yep.
that blue line future. But and this goes back to our conversations before about Casey Middlestat. People said, "Oh, the Jets can get Casey Middlestat." Well, I mean, a lot of people were all over me. I said, I think that conversation is probably starting with a guy like Cole Perfetti. Like, they're not looking to trade Casey Middlestat, for 3/4 on the dollar, if you will. I mean, they were looking for a hockey trade where they're getting another solid young player if they're moving off Middlestat, who is going to need a new contract. I'm just looking in the chat right now. Big guy, could Jets have given up Heinola Stanley for Middlestat? No way. Like, again, this goes to, they're not looking to break down players. In fact, if anything, they're probably looking to give 2 or 3 pieces to get that one guy that can be a centerpiece of them going forward. I mean, they've got a lot of serviceable guys, but especially when you look at that blue line and what they're looking for. I mean, they're looking to add to a core of, arguably the best young defense core, or at least the best group of young defensemen now, with Dahlin, with Power, and now with Byram. I mean, that could be a real strength of Buffalo for a long time moving forward, assuming that all those players are part of the move. But yeah, to your point, I mean, the Colorado Avalanche have we've been waiting to see where they were going to strike, what they were going to do, and listen, I think this speaks to why this next few days is so interesting, especially in the West, because the Vancouver Canucks feel like they've got a shot. The Edmonton Oilers feel like they've got a shot. Vegas always thinks that they can win. I mean, the LA Kings have salvaged their season. I mean, they may be a wild card. Heck, the way Vegas is playing right now, they might be in that 2-3 series. And then you look in the Central Division, and listen, Nashville has had this incredible run. It ended last night against Montreal, their 8-game winning streak. But I mean, the top 3 teams in the Central, Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, all feel like if things go their way, they can be that team that moves on. Dallas has made the move with Chris Tanev. Now the Walker and Middlestat acquisitions for Colorado. All eyes turn on Mr. Kevin Cheveldayoff to see what he's going to be doing when it comes to the next few days. And we'll spend plenty of time on possibilities, but also like looking at this market. And I think the Middlestat trade is a perfect example of what it's going to take to to get talent to come in and help the Winnipeg Jets right now when they feel like they've got a shot to go far in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's a funny thing you bring up there, Huss, because earlier today, Frank Saravalli on Daily Faceoff said that the Blues are open to retaining half of Buchnevich's contract to really hike up the price. Buchnevich, arguably the best player on like trade boards, like a bona fide top 6 winger, $5.5 million, 2 years left on his deal this year and next. He's already going to demand a high price tag, and if they were to retain money, that would make it even higher. And I quote tweeted it and said, like, hey, Jets fans, put your GM hat on for a second. What would you give up to acquire Buchnevich at 50% retained? And honestly, everything should be on the table in that sense, in my opinion. And some fans respond with Heinola, Stanley, Schmidt, and the Montreal second. And it's like, what? Like, like you think
that probably is getting nixed in NHL 2024. Like the computer's saying, sorry, no, trade rejected.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Jets have a lot of high-end forward prospects. Cole Perfetti's still a young player figuring it out. Rucker McGroarty, Colby Barlow, Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, Chaz Lucius. All those names could be thrown in there, and people just kind of throw in Ville Heinola, who's coming off a major ankle injury, and Logan Stanley, who's still a 7th defenseman at 25 years old, despite being a first-round pick. And then a early second-round pick, sure, but Buchnevich's price before the retention was probably a 1 and a high-level prospect. Now with retention, it's probably
Andy Strickland came on the show and said, Andy said they were looking for 2 firsts. Exactly. That was the asking price. Now, again, you can always ask. You don't necessarily get it, and no one has pulled the trigger on that right now. But if Buchnevich, And listen, Buchnevich is interesting because you mentioned the cap retention that St. Louis is willing to include, and the fact that he is signed for another year. And listen, if he's on the books next year for less than $3 million, that really gives you an opportunity. I mean, listen, if you're looking at taking a big swing and a run over the next couple of years and focusing in on that, Pavel Buchnevich at less than $3 million on your cap is, would be huge for any team that could get him, which brings us to the Winnipeg Jets. And listen, as much as we would all love Chevy to take a bunch of spare parts or guys that haven't done much yet and turn that into a legit top 6 player, that is unlikely and not going to be happening. It is going to take a significant package, I believe, to get Pavel Buchnevich. And I mentioned earlier, if you were looking at a player like Casey Middlestat, what's Buffalo going to be? What would they be willing to trade him for? You're looking for talented young players. I still think that Rucker McGroarty is a no-go. I expect him here in Winnipeg later on. I expect him to be a Jet next season. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's, playing for the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs. And we can kind of get to that a little bit more. We'll pick Murat's brain on where he's at with all of that right now. But I do have to ask, and I'll put this out to the chat right now. Why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray? If you can get Pavel Buchnevich and half salary retained, signed for next year, would you be willing to include Cole Perfetti in that package? Without the first round pick this year, these teams are going to be looking for a young, talented roster player. I mean, you're not getting this guy. You're not getting, as I said, $1 for 4 quarters in this case. And I mean, Perfetti projects to be a very good NHL player, I think, for a long time. He's got a ton of assets that, will make him, a very serviceable player. How the height of his, that can be debated. But where he's at right now on this team, I think you can make an argument that if you brought in a Buchnevich and knew you had him for next year and you're making a significant run, knowing that the likes of McGroarty and Brad Lambert and Elias can be coming in over the next couple seasons on ELCs, could you afford to do that? Would you do that? I'm not advocating it, but I am asking for it. And Connor, before I get your answer on that, let's just see in the chat. We got yes, yes, definitely, no, yes. Yes, yep, yes, 1000%. Yeah. Okay. So it's definitely a little bit more, a little positive. Yes, all day long. Yes. In a heartbeat, it's win now. So I would say it's quite positive, although Zach Bartel is on a no, Joe Phoenix is a no, T Will is on a yes. There's definitely more yeses. And listen, I'm not saying that gets it done alone. But I am saying that when St. Louis looks at the Winnipeg Jets roster and what they have, especially as Elliot Friedman's reporting, that they are listening on Jordan Kyrou, to have a young player that projects to be an effective offensive producer who's done it already this year. Like, listen, I know the kid sort of hit the wall right now, and we'll get to last night's game in a minute. I thought played a lot better last night. He had 4 shots on goal. He was noticeable, and, the coaches rewarded him with some time in a big point in the game in the third period last night. But I do wonder, I mean, we all fall in love with these guys, and, they're your guys, and sometimes we overvalue their actual value outside of the market with those players. And I wasn't really thinking that we were going to be talking about the potential of the Winnipeg Jets moving off Cole Perfetti. They love the kid. He's a first-round pick. He is thought to be a very big part of the future. But again, if you're swinging and you're thinking win right now and you're seeing what's happened around it, you may have to make some very tough decisions. So the chat has spoken. Where are you on that, Connor?
I agree with you. I mean, like, Cole Perfetti, I'm going to agree with yours truly in chat here, saying no player is untouchable for Buchnevich at 50% retained for 2 seasons. Like, absolutely not. $2.9 million would be his cap hit for this year and next. And that would give you so much flexibility. You're getting a bona fide top 6 winger for under $3 million on the cap. And this isn't like a slight at Cole Perfetti. Like, he's an incredibly talented young player. Like you said, he's hit the wall. But the fact that like this is a discussion is a compliment to him. Like he's going to be a star in this league. He has like 60, 70 assist season potential in him, given his vision and passing ability. And the fact that he can like be discussed as a potential trade chip to get a bona fide top 6 winger at 50% retained is kind of a compliment to him, even though he's hit the wall here and we've talked about his struggles, but everyone knows he's going to bounce back. He's like I said, an incredibly talented young winger, and he'll be just fine. I don't think that like entertaining this idea is some like disrespectful thing to Cole Perfetti. It's he's everyone knows he's going to be a
Bowen
stud.
Byram just got
I
traded for Casey Middlestat. I mean,
exactly.
Like that's a guy that was picked
absolutely
4th overall in the draft. So
yeah, I absolutely would. My final answer is I would, because Buchnevich,
and I don't know whether the Jets are interested in that. I mean, the Jets are a team that has always, planned on building themselves through the draft. I mean, we know at the start of the year, for the majority of this season, Cole Perfetti was a top 6 player for the Winnipeg Jets. Do you think you can win a Stanley Cup with him playing right now or next season in that position? I think most people would say probably not. And that is why, particularly with what's happened over the last month, why Cole's found himself on the 4th line, as well as in Carolina in the press box. So it would be a real investment in now, but to me, that's the sort of asset that might get the St. Louis Blues to come a little closer to make that sort of deal. Listen, we got much more to do this, but I got to thank a few of our sponsors right now. As I mentioned, we were supposed to have Pat Steinberg come on, but Pat is a little under the weather, and he's hoping he's going to be able to grind out and do his show, but that's fine because we still got to get to last night's game and a whole bunch of other topics around it. But as I mentioned, if you are listening on YouTube afterwards, let us know. Who knows? Maybe there's a trade done by the time you're watching this. You never know with the timing of everything. But let us know your comments on the Why Not question of the day in the chat as well, and in the comments of this YouTube video. Just before we bring Connor back in here, got to shout out Spicy and the guys over at Consolidated Supply. It is, I know we got a snowfall warning right now, and it doesn't really feel like spring. But I'll tell you what, we're into March, folks, and this is going to come, and then it's going to go. And we're going to be working ahead on all sorts of projects. And whether it is for your business or your home, our guys at Consolidated Supply are ready for a big spring and summer. They, of course, are the leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf, golf carts is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba, both new and used. They've also got other great options for your property, including amazing hot tubs and incredible outdoor kitchen options. And of course, they're also the experts and the go-to guys for small engine parts and repair. Check out Consolidated Supply online at cte.ca and head on down to their showroom, open to the public at 1395 Niagara Road East. Tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. And again, their website for more on Consolidated Supply is cte.ca. A big congrats to Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery. The new location's finally open. Head on down and check them out at the new spot in the south side of the city, 452 Dover Court Drive, a beautiful new facility, a great home for the Manitoba Battery gang. And, they always have great deals. I mean, the best prices in town. They beat the pants off the big box stores, period. Shopping local. But they're in such a good mood with this new location that any battery you need that's regularly priced at over $60 is now $10 cheaper when you pick it up in store. And check this out. If you need AA's or AAA batteries, skip the cheap versions and grab some industrial grade energizers for only 40 cents a piece. Those deals and much more. Grand opening specials right now for Manitoba Battery. 452 Dover Court Drive's the new location, the original spot, 1026 Logan Avenue. And of course, you can always order online at manitobabattery.com or give them a call at 783-8787. Bella's thinking about spring. If you need a new look or just want to refresh the cut, get on down to Modern Man Barber Shops with 8 locations in the city of Winnipeg. including their newest standalone locations on Plessis Road and Pembina Highway, right by Bishop. Modern Man Guys has you covered with a variety of grooming services, including haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. We can book your look via modernmanbarber.com, and make sure to give them a follow on Instagram as well at Modern Man Barbershops. And just before we continue the festivities here, got to shout out our friends at Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey. Had such a great event with WSTers and the Canadian Club gang at the Whiskey Festival event we did at the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame, that we looking forward to doing it again. But in the meantime, Whiskey Fest is over, but the great taste of Canadian Club's always waiting for you at your local Manitoba liquor marts. Check out their display when you pop in next. And remember to always enjoy responsibly. All right, so things have changed a little bit on the show today. We were going to have Pat Steinberg earlier on. Pat is, yep. Oh, sorry. We've got, I think we're going to bring in Murat a little earlier than normal. So, Connor, if you want to hang tight and do me a favor, while we're talking, keep your eye on Twitter and the trade boards and all that. And fill us in. We can break in if there's any news. We do have a whole bunch of audio from last night coming out of it. We're going to get to maybe a little bit of that coming up with Murat in a minute. But we'll chop it up with Murat on both the deals around the league as well as where the Jets are right now heading in. Connor will come back in. We'll stay on top of the trade tracker throughout the afternoon. And again, we will get to last night because I do want to take a vindication lap for my cash take from years ago on this program that reared an ugly head last night. And, of course, everything that happened in the game. But right now, let's welcome in Murat Ates from The Athletic. And, Murat, what's up? How are you?
I'm doing well. What a wild and wonderful pre-deadline Wednesday we've got, especially in the West so far.
Like Connor said it best at the start. We were kind of coming on and we thought we were going to have Pat and talk, oh, what's Calgary kind of doing? And then this almost feels like deadline day. I'm glad we've got lots of fun things to occupy and guess on Friday because a lot of this stuff is happening right now. I mean, I do want to kind of dive into last night's game and where the Jets are. But I'm going to hit you with a few questions just to get your thoughts on what's happened so far. We have to stay in the Central Division. Thoughts on two very significant trades by the Colorado Avalanche. We've all been sort of waiting to see what Colorado would do. We knew they had needs. Well, they filled a couple of them, getting Walker from Philadelphia, and a trade that I don't think a lot of people saw happening, moving former 4th overall pick Bowen Byram to the Buffalo Sabres for Casey Middlestat for some more scoring down the middle.
Yeah, it was wild in that when Colorado picked up Walker from Philadelphia, you sort of looked up and down their roster and you said, well, they've got plenty of quality defensemen, Bowen Byram among them. What's going on here? And clearly their needs are more like a second-line center. And then they make that move for Casey Middlestat. And I remember talking to Matthew Fairburn. He covers the he covers the Buffalo Sabres for the Athletic. And we were talking about how realistic a Middlestat trade might be. And he said, well, look, this guy, the Sabres are invested in him. They've watched him develop. He's one of the few bright spots so far this season. Yes, contract talks this summer, that could be an issue, but they're only going to move him if there's something great that comes by the other way. And I thought, okay, well, this isn't, Ville Heinola in a second-round pick territory for the Winnipeg Jets, let's say. And Colorado blew that out of the water. I think Bowen Byram has lost some shine league-wide, a little bit injuries, a little bit less offensive production than when he first arrived. But that is a quality young defenseman that Buffalo got for Casey Middlestat. And Middlestat, quality, prime-age centerman who can do so many different things well. And I think he makes Colorado a very good team. Meanwhile, Walker covers up a lot of that offensive ability because he's so good at jumping into the play. He tracks back. He gaps well. He's a great second wave of attack. That's a very good Colorado Avalanche team all of a sudden, and even honestly before that trade too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a significant price. I mean, they give up their 2025 first rounder, and we know that that is often the currency when we're talking about acquiring top picks and top players. But they certainly fill the hole left by Byram with Walker in that deal. And now they've got that top six centerman to play behind Nathan McKinnon that really they've been missing for the majority of the season. Just quickly, we'll talk about a couple of these other.
They've got Rantanen under contract for this season and next at $9.25 million. So I think a lot of folks, I mean, they look at McKinnon, he signed forever. Okay, Colorado's just going to be in the mix for a while. Landeskog has been out for a couple seasons with health issues. So maybe they're in a holding pattern. You look at Mikko Rantanen under this year and one more at $9.25 million. That is a bit of a ticking clock for them. There is, even though they're set for years, there is a sense of all in, got to get it done while all of the key pieces are in place at cap hits that work for them.
We'll get to the other trades that are more so focused on the East in a minute. But I have to ask you, what do you think's happening in the Jets war room right now when the reaction amongst Kevin Cheveldayoff and his staff when they see what the Avalanche have just pulled off over the course of the last couple hours?
I mean, I would love to be a fly on that wall. I would absolutely
it would be fascinating.
Love to know, what are the emotions like? Because, Kevin Cheveldayoff and his management team, their biggest strength has been basically being able to keep emotions in check, right? Like they grind it out, keep their cards close to their vest. And I mean, with Sean Monahan, there was some smoke there. I had a source tell me they were, in advance of that trade that they were interested in him. But his best work, Paul Stastny, let's say, or Nino Niederreiter, Vladislav Nemestikov last year, it often comes with a hint of mystery to it. And that takes diligence and not knee-jerk reactions. And here you have Colorado absolutely loading up. Sean Walker, is a player who I like. I liked as a fit for Winnipeg if for some reason they were shopping in that aisle, and I don't think they were. Tanev to Dallas, pardon me. I thought that was a great stylistic fit for Winnipeg if they were shopping in that aisle, but I don't think they were. And so you've got a situation where Winnipeg has cap space. They have a quality roster, top to bottom. It's a very good team. They're amongst the contenders, but they're surrounded by teams making big pushes. Like what levers can you actually pull? What levers do you want to pull if you're Cheveldayoff? Because they also, I think the feeling is that they gave up a first round pick for Sean Monahan, and they were only willing to do that because they identified, and credit to them, they correctly identified that he would be a quality fit and fix a lot of things. So it's tough for me to sit here now and point to that one player, that one move that's going to completely pull Winnipeg back into this arms race if they have that intention.
Middlestat is still leading the Buffalo Sabres in scoring. Was before he was dealt a couple hours ago. He had 14 goals, 33 assists for 47 points. Last year was 15 goals, 44 assists for 59 points. We inevitably got into talking about a player like Buchnevich and what he could do for Winnipeg, the fact that he signed for an extra year, the fact that St. Louis reportedly is willing to eat 50% of the salary if they can improve the return on that. I have to ask you, how would you gauge Cole Perfetti's value compared to a Middlestat or a Bowen Byram? Both all young players, all highly drafted first rounders at different stages of their NHL career.
I think in the NHL, there's a sense of how often have they done the thing. And by that, I mean, how many years have they chained together of being that as effective as they are? And Bowen Byram has a couple more years on Cole Perfetti. Casey Middlestat has a little bit of time on that, though he's only recently come into his own. So I don't think Cole Perfetti would have the value of either of those players necessarily, but I think he's close too. He does come with pedigree, a high draft pick, a sense of hockey IQ. If you look at his primary point production, it's up there with I think Tim Stützle was the last comparable I saw this year. There's some really impressive company that he keeps if you look at the right specific stats. If you look at the minutes that he's played, the production that he's had, there's a lot there. And I think that maybe the market in Winnipeg, and by market I mean fan base, has soured on Perfetti of late. He had a lengthy point production drought. His minutes have been relatively low, so the amount of chances he was creating weren't turning into goals. Lo and behold, he gets an assist just for clearing the zone. That's kind of hockey being hockey a little bit there. I think that probably the public perception on Perfetti in Winnipeg right now is below what his actual trade value would be. At the same time, I think Byram can point to those playoffs he stepped in and was just an exciting, dynamic presence for Colorado, and Mittelstadt can point to just enormous production as well. I don't think Perfetti is quite on that same tier at this stage of his career.
That being said, I mean, getting a player a little earlier on in the game before they get to that, if they've shown all that, certainly has value, especially to rebuilding teams that are looking at sort of the next 5 to 6 years as opposed to right now. Which brings us to our conversation about Pavel Buchnevich. Maybe first talk about the fit and what he would bring to the Winnipeg Jets. And then we can sort of get into what the Jets would have to give up to get him and whether they'd be willing to do it.
Yeah, Buchnevich is a quality play driver and scorer, right? There's guys who control what zone the game gets played in, and there's guys that score, and he does both. He's a big guy. He can get to the net. He's got good offensive instincts. He plays enough of a 200-foot game to help on that front too. A left shot, so if you're drawing him into Winnipeg's lineup, you've got to keep Nikolai Ehlers on the right side, I think. I'm imagining Buchnevich would be beside Monahan, and then Ehlers would be on the other side of him, with Rick Bowness going to Connor Scheifele and Velarde on the top line. So if that's the case, you might quibble with the fact that you've got to put Ehlers on the right-hand side. That's not a quibble I have, but the Jets might. At the same time, you've got Buchnevich at a tremendous point producer, a play driver who's under contract next season as well, is he not? So with reports that the Blues are even willing to retain a little bit of salary, there's your player that sort of is quality enough to put you over the edge, I think, put you over the top. And it comes down to the type of price that they ask for. If I recall correctly, Chris Johnston, my colleague, was talking about St. Louis's ask as being more than what Calgary got for Elias Lindholm, which means a first-round pick, a pair of prospects, another player. So now you're talking about Cole Perfetti type of quality, like a first and Cole Perfetti. Is that a Buchnevich deal? I don't know. I don't know what that discussion actually looks like. But when the player is that good, under contract for another year, can do as much as Buchnevich can, and St. Louis is reportedly willing to retain on him, that's a hefty price. And I think that might price Winnipeg out of a situation like that.
Well, and it's part of the reason why I threw that question out. And again, I'm not here banging the drum that Cole Perfetti should be on the trade block or move. But if people want to get quality like we are talking about Buchnevich, there's a significant ask. Now, is Perfetti valued at, like, I would argue that Perfetti should be worth more than a first-round pick that projects to be 20, 22, 24, heck, best case scenario in the 30s. And maybe if that is the case, that Montreal pick that is essentially a late first rounder, it's going to be somewhere between 33 and 40 probably, would make the thing. Now, I put it to the chat, and it certainly was by no means unanimous, but I would say, the question was, would you be willing to include Cole Perfetti in a package to get Pavel Buchnevich? Certainly the fans, and listen, fans always want to make the big swing and go for it, and I get it, but there's a lot of reasons to believe that this is a time where the Winnipeg Jets should be aggressive, especially with what's happening around. This young player, the organization very well. Where are you at on, would the Jets even consider a player that has been thought of as a big, big part of the future, although has had a real rough run over the course of the last month? We can't forget what he did earlier in the season. Would they be willing to include him in a package? And does that make sense for the team? What do you think?
It's a great question. It's really compelling. And I think that the way that I'm going to process this are in sort of the signs that they would be willing and the signs that they wouldn't, or maybe the case to do it and the case not to. Kevin Cheveldayoff historically has been unwilling to give up on is not the right way, but to move players at this stage of their career. I remember Jack Roslovic being a highly sought after trade chip at one point, and it took the Patrick Laine trade where Roslovic was no longer happy in Winnipeg to move him to Columbus at that stage. I think in years previous to that Winnipeg received calls on Roslovic, and that was a player they were unwilling to move. I think I hold Perfetti in higher esteem than that as a player and a more likely fit in a top six in a long-term situation. So management, I think to this point, has generally been unwilling to move players of his quality and promise at this stage of their careers. I think the case to trade Perfetti would be that he's, essentially a fourth line player on Rick Bonus's lineup of the Jets, right? Like if you look at the roster rules as we know them for this year's Winnipeg Jets, Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton, guaranteed third line. Monahan, guaranteed second line center. Scheifele, guaranteed first line center. You put Connor and Velarde on Scheifele's wings, as the Jets have shown that they're willing to do. You put Ehlers on Monahan's wing, and you can see, because he's not playing him there, that Rick Bowness does not believe in Cole Perfetti as a second line left wing here and now heading into the playoffs. There's every reason to believe that he's going to continue to limit this player's minutes heading down the stretch run and the playoffs themselves. If you add a top six quality forward, Perfetti might not even be an everyday player for Rick Bowness's Winnipeg Jets right now. Another reason why you might look at going all in to that extent right now in the Winnipeg Jets timeline. What is it? $5 million plus in cap space, in the ability to add $5 million worth of contracts right now. That doesn't come around every year. This is a uniquely quality team relative to what the Winnipeg Jets pay. Scheifele's getting a raise. Hellebuck's getting a raise. There's a little bit of contract uncertainty on other players on defense. The cap is going up, so it's not like this is now or never, but there are some unique reasons to think Winnipeg is in a good cap situation. The other thing would be, we know that Hellebuck and Scheifele have these 7-year contract extensions after this year, and we know that they're elite, top-quality players, Hellebuck especially, Scheifele too. And there is, though, a sense of what are they going to be capable of at 35 years old, 36 years old. There is an element of these peak players in their prime. Yes, they're going to be good for a while yet, but how good? And could this be a special year in terms of what Winnipeg is building? So I think that there are reasons to strike now and to push this year. I think that I can see Perfetti not being a short-term solution in Winnipeg, and maybe that makes him available. I think management has tended to take a longer-term view in moments like this for players like that. So I'm thinking less likely than likely, but at least there's a case for it if the right player comes back.
Yeah, and a big part of it is how much that other team values the player that we're talking about. But again, he's got 14 goals and 17 assists, I believe, now in the season. This is the first time he's played this much, and I think we'd all agree has hit a wall. But to your point, I know they think highly of him, and they think that he's got a bright future in the organization. But in the here and now, and potentially not just this season, but next season, if this team is going to compete, where does Cole fit in this lineup? And can you use that potential to bolster yourself now and next season for two legitimate chances to win a cup with Scheifele and Hellebuck in their prime?
Well, I think it depends on your sense of urgency, because if it's right here, right now, then move Perfetti. He's not right here, right now, whether in the coach's eyes or in his recent production as well. I have a higher esteem of the player than the minutes that he's getting. I really do. I think that it's kind of funny that he got an assist by chipping the puck out, and Barron makes an amazing play and takes an amazing shot, because during his scoreless stretch, Perfetti was creating chances of a much higher quality variety than the one he got paid for, and I think people overlook that. So I think the perception is at a relative low relative to this player's quality. But if it's about this year, if it's about now, do you think Rick Bowness is coaching with Perfetti's 5th year or 6th year in mind? No, this is a team that is about the present moment. I think that if the coach, who is on the final year of his contract with a club option for next year is all in right here and right now, and the team management wise has shown that they're willing to add players to this, and certainly they believe in Bowness as a coach, well, then there is a sense of urgency. The thing I'd caution against, though, I think if you look at the kinds of minutes that he's gotten, the relative small number of minutes that he's gotten, like if you look at the amount of extra games that a Seth Jarvis or a Marco Rossi has been able to play in impactful roles, I just think that it could be next season. It could be as soon as next season where the collective viewpoint on Cole Perfetti is this is a quality top six player who's on a bridge contract and delivering tremendous value for that. I don't think he's far off of it. So if your window is here and now, by all means move him. If your window begins next year, includes next year, even the year after it, I think that he's going to provide quite a bit more value than maybe folks think he's going to provide based on his recent play.
Is it fair to wonder how he fares come playoff time because of how different the style of game is?
I think so, especially at this stage of his career. We know, like, we don't see him as a fast player or a big, strong player, right? And these are disadvantages. Certainly, the fact that he's in a scoring slump as well. It coincides with the fact that we see the NHL season as in chapters, right? Like the competition escalates and escalates and escalates. So I think there's going to be a story about him that this is not the type of hockey that he's geared for until he proves otherwise. And honestly, I think that that's fair. I think we've seen young players struggle in their first playoffs many, many, many times. Nikolai Ehlers, 7 assists in that 2018 run. Nobody remembers that he set up the first goal Winnipeg scored in Game 7 against Nashville, but the 0 goal, 7 assist thing, people wondered, okay, well, was he ready for it? Even Kyle Connor, who scored some incredible goals, I think Game 5 against Nashville, he was on an absolute tear. We remember the rush he took with Mark Scheifele and the impact that they had. Well, prior to Game 5 against Nashville, he was 0 goals, 3 assists, and I think he was a minus player at that point too, right? Like, these are some of the best young players Winnipeg has ever had, and one might argue they had more of an impact in the season. Don't need to argue it. It was true. They had more of an impact in the season leading up to those playoffs, and still they found it to be an adjustment. And I think that, I think that's a very realistic thing. Cole Perfetti here and now, I don't think you can expect him to be an absolute impact player in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think he's a player whose peak years come in the future, probably starting next year and beyond that.
I guess, we kind of bring up Perfetti because he has been, plenty of conversations about just the trajectory of his season so far this year and where he is in the lineup right now. Let's say the Jets aren't willing to trade Cole Perfetti. What do you think it takes? What can the Jets do, and what would they be willing to get a player of a Buchnevich's caliber, whether it's him or maybe someone that we're not talking about in Chevy style, a la Paul Stastny back in 2018?
Yeah, it's fun to talk about this stuff because as much as sometimes there's smoke, oftentimes there isn't, and the idea of a shovel day off special is just fun. Even if they happen every once in a blue moon, that's a fun thought. So what can the Jets do? I think that we collectively agree that the Jets view Rutger McGroarty as untouchable. I think they see too much off-ice potential in him, captaincy in the future, his ability to be a leader, not just amongst ordinary athletes, but amongst leaders is renowned. And I think that they really want him to be part of their long-term future. Beyond that, I think that the organization is high on Elias Salomonsson. I think fan base, like the ones who really pay attention to prospects, have recognized that that's a great pick and a really high-quality young player. Is he untouchable, though? I'm not sure. And the Colby Barlows and Brad Lamberts of the world, are they untouchable? I honestly don't think so. Winnipeg has done well to rebuild its prospect pool, partly from past trade deadlines. That Andrew Kopp trade is a gift that keeps giving. It used to be that you wondered when Cole Perfetti was drafted, Winnipeg's prospect pool was quite shallow, and they've built it and built it and built it. So I think there is a sense that Winnipeg could afford more this year than in recent seasons to move these types of player out. Would Colby Barlow and a future first get you a Buchnevich? Maybe it would. Would that be a price the Jets were willing to pay? I mean, that's close. It makes me give pause, and I wonder what fans would think about that as well. But my hot take is you're sort of getting into the territory.
Well, and I mean, as I said, this goes back to Andy Strickland, who's very tied in, especially in St. Louis, where he's part of the broadcast team and does that Cam and Strick podcast. He said that they're asked probably, they don't have to trade him. They've still got him for next year. They could revisit this in the summer if they want. It's probably going to take a couple first-round picks or something thereabout. And that's why we talk about a young player that I think is more established in the NHL and has shown enough that maybe he is worth more than somewhat of a lottery pick, which is, a lottery ball, if you will, or ticket at the end, towards the end of the first round. I haven't thought before that the Winnipeg Jets would be willing to trade that 2025 first rounder, considering that they've already traded the one for this year's draft. But the more I think about, how wide open the West is and seeing what Colorado just did, I'm not sure whether I'm giving maybe a little bit more thought to it. It would not be a typical Jets move to be that aggressive and blast out your first rounders in the next 2 drafts for acquisitions. But where do you sit on that, Murat?
I mean, for a player who's helping for more than 1 year, I think they would be willing to do that. I don't think the Jets like trading first round picks, but they have done it a lot. They did it in 2018. They did it in 2019. They've just done it again. It's not something beyond them in terms of their past behavior. I do think that they value them quite highly. So that's an interesting one for me. I think that if they are focused on this time period, that there might be some cause for that. Especially Buchnevich is a unique situation because he's around for 1 more year and checks off so many boxes. I think that Winnipeg's blue sky scenario is likely a player, in his peak years, or a relatively young player who does have term on his contract yet. And I think that's where that type of asset actually is sensible to go out the door. But for another rental, no, I couldn't see it myself. I really couldn't. I've also been looking we talked about the Avalanche and, Byram moving out for Middlestat. And, I've been looking at some of the other trades. The idea of a Perfetti type, a young player who is a little bit more established, they've had some currency in recent years. And, I thought of Yegor Sharangovich, who went from New Jersey to Calgary in that Tyler Toffoli deal before Toffoli cranked out a 30-goal season. He's on pace for another one. Maybe there is something to be said for those younger established players who are far better than a lottery pick, but still working on establishing themselves in the league. And that's kind of my segue too, to wondering if Tyler Toffoli being another natural right-handed shot would be a fit for Winnipeg.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, obviously we started talking about Buchnevich, and he's got a lot of interest for many reasons. Toffoli for me would be right up. To be honest, I was having a conversation with a friend earlier this morning about what Tarasenko with his right shot would look like in the top 6. Then I see he goes to Florida, and I had the reverse sticker shock. I couldn't believe how little Ottawa got, but I also didn't realize that he could basically dictate where he went because he had a full no move. Good on his agent for looking ahead to the trade deadline when he signed that 1-year deal with the Ottawa Senators. If you were putting together a wish list, and again, every player comes with a different return on it of what you have to give up. I mean, where are Buchnevich and Toffoli in that group? And are there any other players in that category that, you include as guys that could come in, be difference makers, and be worth the assets that it would take to get them?
Yeah, I think both of those are really quality and highly desirable players. I think that Buchnevich, with the extra year on his contract, is even more appealing to me. I really value that player. I think there's a lot of quality there. I look at the Jets lineup, and again, I talked about these hard and fast rules that I've interpreted from how Rick Bowness has run things. You got that Lowry line intact. I don't think he's breaking it up unless something wild happens. That Connor Scheifele-Velarde line, I think that, I'm assuming Velarde at good health in time for the stretch run and playoffs, but we don't know that as of yet. We're still waiting for the next round of updates. I think that that's the most likely top line. So you've got Sean Monahan, and you have Rick Bowness with the stated preference that Nikolai Ehlers is on the left wing. So ideally, a top 6 forward with a right shot is is the on paper fit for the Winnipeg Jets. And okay, Buchnevich is good enough. You'll forgive the fact he's a left shot. But for me, Tyler Toffoli, who's nothing but a finisher and a quality player and a guy who generates offensive chances. I think about, had Toffoli and not Neil Pionk been on the receiving end of Nikolai Ehlers' pass against Seattle last night, it was less than 24 hours ago. It was Seattle. But when Pionk makes that shot, I think Tyler Toffoli is a righty buries that. He's scored at a 30 goal per 82 game pace for the last 3 seasons. And again, I think that his right shot would be coveted by the Jets. I think somebody pointed out to me that Kenny and Rennie were speculating about an Alex Tuck type player from Buffalo. I don't see why Buffalo would be incentivized to move that player, but there's a right-handed shot who's also generated a 30-goal type pace over a lot of years. Great contract on him. He's got a couple years left. These are the types of things I think about. I think it's got to be a right-handed shot, a legitimate driver of the play and of real live goals. And I think it's got to be able to move Ehlers to the left wing. If you do that, I think you make the coach happy and you help the Jets too.
Yeah, you mentioned Tuck, and I think Hammer originally brought that up with us on Monday.
Oh.
And I sort of, and then the guys were talking about it as well subsequently. And I, at the start, saying, well, there's no way in the world Buffalo would do that. I mean, he's 27. He was a centerpiece of the Eichel trade. He's from Buffalo. I mean, he is the big Buffalo guy. He's really bought into being there and being part of that organization. But again, they're out of the playoffs again. And I mean, they are looking to make significant moves. But I think the ask for a player like Alex Tuck, would be significant, especially when you consider that he's on that deal that he signed in Vegas, making less than $5 million a year with 2 more years on it. But he certainly would be a guy that I think would be very, very much a perfect fit here in Winnipeg. We've been spending so much time on the forwards. How much do you think they're looking at the blue line? And is there a chance, were we wasting our time talking about all these top forwards when they might be looking to fortify the blue line if they're going to take a big swing? Where are you at on all of that?
It's funny. I think the more realistic acquisition is on defense. I really do. I think it's a case, it's not just about what the idealized fit is. Like Tuck, for example. I'm with you. If I were Buffalo and I saw my team getting more expensive in the upcoming seasons, they have some cap issues, maybe a little less now that Mittelstadt is gone, but Byram, also has a salary. I think that's, or will need a salary. I think he's an RFA. I think Buffalo would do well to keep a value contract like Tuck. Too good of a player, too cheap, they have too many young players aging into raises in that market. So, okay, well, look at the defense market where Winnipeg is probably more likely to work around the edges. I'm thinking third pairing quality type players than to be making a big swing. Part of that is, again, what the market as we know it is. Cheveldayoff will have more information, obviously, and he surprised us before. I think the ideal defenseman to add to Winnipeg would be a right-hander, would be capable of top 4 minutes in a pinch, would definitely be able to outperform third pairing minutes. Again, veteran, perhaps cup winning experience. And the list of players like that is actually not that long, right? Like, the highest quality players were probably Tanev and Walker, who are off the market at this stage. Then to look at, okay, well, who's left that could be on and off that third pair, who's a righty. Schmidt's been good. Schmidt and Sandberg outscore teams. It's a really good thing Winnipeg has going on, but to make Winnipeg feel just a little bit more comfortable, I thought Alex Carrier from Nashville would be a perfect fit on that third pair. A right-hander, tough, hard-nosed, can kill penalties, block shots, huge competitor. But now Nashville's played themselves into a playoff position. So what's going to happen there? And so, what if it's just a down-the-roster thing, not even an everyday player? And I've poked around in my head the idea of an Eric Johnson type. I've poked around because of the cup-winning experience, the right-handed shot, the idea he doesn't have to play every day, and the fact that I think there's a lot of people who believe that, yes, he's long past top 4 effectiveness, but for Colorado a couple years ago, he did elevate his game in a limited role. And I think he did deliver a lot of the things that the Cup-winning Avalanche asked. But I don't think that's necessarily good enough. It's just a fit that seems to make sense when I think about it.
Hey, Murat, do you have a second? Can you hang around for a few more minutes if you don't mind? I want to ask you about last night's game and the Ehlers thing. Okay, perfect. Give me 2 seconds because I do want to quickly give a shout out to our friends at Little Brown Jug, and here's a quick word from them.
We're not just for the showboats or the champions. We're here for the good ones, the ones who work hard and show up for others not to get recognized, but because it's the right thing to do. We'd like to think that our good intentions show up in our beer. We keep working to perfect it, not because we want fame or fanfare, but because you deserve it. 1919, the good you deserve.
All right, again, big thanks to Little Brown Jug. We'll probably be cracking a few generics after that extended show on Friday, planning to get going at 11 a.m. on Trade Deadline Day, which also happens to be the 3rd anniversary of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Also want to thank Wallace & Wallace. They're gearing up for a big spring. It's going to be very shortly. Hopefully the snow will leave, and we'll be seeing the Wallace & Wallace fences and trucks all over the city. The fencing and overhead door experts in the city since 1946. And while fencing will be everywhere come the melting of the snow, right now with these crazy fluctuations in temperatures is the time that's putting the most stress on your garage door. Now, if you need a new garage door, they've got the best selection in town as the Clopay dealer in Manitoba. But to prevent downtime for your garage door, you can give Wallace & Wallace a call to book your maintenance and inspection service call today. For commercial and residential overhead door sales and service, there's only one name or two you need to know, and that is Wallace & Wallace. Speaking of looking good, you got to shout out our pals over at F Apparel. When the snow melts, you know what comes up next. Wedding season, people getting out. A real time to maybe spice up that wardrobe, fellas. And if you do need to do that, get down to Winnipeg's #1 menswear spot, and that is F Apparel. They have incredible deals on custom suits beginning at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you are getting married or in a wedding party, definitely talk to the fellas at F about a 15% discount when all the guys get their suits at F Apparel for the big day. They've also got great deals for high school grads if you're looking to get that young man a suit that he can wear far beyond his big day, moving out of the school age years. F Apparel, find out more online, book an appointment. It's fepapparel.com, and pop down and see him at 190 Smith Street. And just before we bring Murat back in, I got to shout out our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. Speaking of spring and summer, cannot wait for the upcoming fishing season. If you're looking for a world-class fly-in fishing opportunity right here in Manitoba where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours, Aikens Lake is the spot. As incredible as the world-class fishing is, even a guy like me caught a couple master anglers there. It's the hospitality of the Aikens team and the Turin family that puts the experience way over the top. Find out more at aikenslake.com, and you can also check them out on all their socials over at Aikens Lake. Murat Ates is with us. We're going to get back to our WST trade desk with Connor Hrabchak in just a few minutes. But let's bring in Murat back in. And Murat, we spoke so much. I mean, it's been such a crazy morning with all of these deals. We haven't really talked quite a bit about last night's game. I just quickly wanted to get your thoughts on, an up and down game for the Winnipeg Jets. A lot of good, but man, they got away from it at times. Very loose, and an Unhellebuckian night led to a home loss in a game that, they really did control for the majority of the game, I thought.
Yeah, I thought Winnipeg should, the story was that Winnipeg should take over that game. Seattle had played the previous night, and they'd played a hard game against Calgary as well. Winnipeg was theoretically rested, though they did have their weekend back-to-back, and I think they were playing third and fourth nights. My memory is what it is. So it was a tough battle, and I think that Winnipeg gave itself a chance to win by creating some chances in the zone. I think they wanted more than what they got as well. My big thing, though, was that their transition game was a lot worse than I expected it to be last night. I thought that Winnipeg might have the extra jump on Seattle. I thought that they might have more situations where they were attacking the offensive line with numbers, with a second wave, with the defensemen. And as a matter of fact, they got burned in transition a lot. Just a quick misplay at the line, Scheifele to Dillon. There's a mishandle there. Seattle puts together a 5-on-2 rush with Scheifele chasing just behind sort of a 5-on-3. But that's the Jets getting burnt in transition on that first Seattle Kraken goal. That's trouble. You do not like seeing that many Jets forwards behind that many Kraken attackers. And it was a continued situation. The Jets gave up 2-on-1s. They gave up on odd man rushes. And for me, a lot of that was just timing, rhythm, and also effort. And that's not a situation that you like to see at this stage of the season, especially against a team that is conceivably that tired. To the Kraken's credit, they were clever about sending stretch passes up the ice. They were hanging out that sometimes forwards were jumping the zone, flying the zone for stretch options, or even parked at the Jets' blue line. But I thought Winnipeg would do a much better job of winning the transition game than they did yesterday. And I think that's a concern. Otherwise, once they got established in the zone, I thought that their workers went to work. I thought the third line was very, very good. I thought, that Lowry, Niederreiter, and Appleton line had one of their best games in a long time. So there were things to like. This isn't a sound the alarm sort of situation, but I did think Winnipeg should be better than it was against Seattle in the loss.
Yeah, I was with you. And I mean, I'll echo your thoughts on the third line. I mean, I thought all three of those guys had great games. And I know Mason Appleton, for whatever reason, takes some heat in the chat room and whatnot. He's doing everything he can to stay in that spot right now. I mean, 2 really nice primary assists. I mean, especially the one to, a spot where only Nino Niederreiter could get his stick on it. And we know what happens when Nino takes the puck to the net. I mean, they were awesome. I also thought that the line with Ehlers and Monahan created quite a bit last night. They just didn't really get rewarded for it. I mean, what did you think about that? Listen, there's been so much talk about Ehlers and where he fits. I believe that they are hoping that those guys can fit together as a very dangerous second line. We saw them out there quite a bit last night. Where were you at on their performance?
Yeah, I thought the same as you, that they were pretty good with a sense that they could have produced more than they did. The play that I keep replaying was with the extra attacker, Ehlers to Pionk. That's not necessarily the same situation, but I think that they've got something going there. And you can understand why Winnipeg might ideally like another top 6 winger to add to that line to create a little bit more dynamic, let's say. I also think, we didn't get too many looks at it, but the power play, Monahan is a great addition. Scheifele continues to be quality. But if anyone is truly quarterbacking that thing, for me, it's Gabriel Velarde from beside the net. And I think we're starting to see the Jets miss him. It's only been a couple of games. But him from below the goal line, all the options that he has, I think plus Monahan are the fit. So, I like some things that the second line was doing for sure. But they're, I think, not yet at finished product status. I also want to give the Jets credit. We're 13 games into Sean Monahan's Jets career as these other players arrive with their new teams for the first time. Some of that was market dictated with Lindholm going to Vancouver, and there was a need to strike quickly, I think. I think Winnipeg was in on Lindholm. I think that was a real conversation, and Monahan was an important player to get as well. So credit to them for striking when they did, so that we can have this conversation and point to examples of their chemistry slowly building. And obviously Monahan with 8 goals in those 13 games as well. That's been a good addition to the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, he's paid dividends so far. But again, it feels like it's so far in the past, and we are where we are right now. And you see what's happening with Colorado, and you see what's happening with Dallas and all these other teams. It certainly seems like it's even increased the urgency to make things happen with a further deal. You had a great piece. A very fair piece, talking about, Ehlers usage. It's been a topic that we've talked quite a bit about. It's dominated a lot of the Twitter sphere over, I mean, not just the last few days, but, you know, with everything that happened on the weekend and the way they came back and won, it's very interesting to hear people on both sides. I mean, you talked to Rick Bowness. I mean, you got into that a little bit more about his decision-making. Where are you at now on the best fit, the best mix of the top six? I guess, obviously, before we get to the deadline, pending some sort of addition, and what that means for the team and the top six moving forward into when it really counts. And that, of course, is the playoffs.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. You're right. I wrote at length about it, and having the opportunity to talk to Rick Bowness and sort of interpret what his answers were like. I mean, it's clear that he prefers Ehlers on the left side, or at least that is a good pretense for him to use. The sense I got was that that he sees Ehlers as a dynamic player and also maybe a less consistent player than say Kyle Connor or other top line left wing options. Someone he has to manage a little bit more to take advantage of things when he's on his game compared to when he's off his game. For me, like, I don't necessarily agree with that rationale. I think that this is a situation where real, live, passionate human emotion maybe gets in the way of in the way of decision making. Because when you see Ehlers make a giveaway and it's a backhand pass to the middle of the ice, and you know, I'm thinking about Buffalo picking up that puck and then turns it into a stretch pass opportunity. It turns into an icing. Nothing bad happens. But I can see a lot of people, Ehlers' teammates, I can see the coach all having a heart attack moment in that sort of situation where for them it might not matter all the other things that he creates and all of the positive goal differential and all of the results if in and alongside all of that every once in a while they sort of have to have their heart rate doubled by a play that he makes. Because I think that that's a real thing. But you go into the numbers and they're so long-term, so much of a trend. I mean, he's outscored his opposition when played with Mark Scheifele forever. Since 2018-19, that first stretch he played with Wheeler and Scheifele, that line was dominant. This year, the Ehlers-Scheifele-Velarde line, 15-4 they let in goals. 5-on-5 this year, goals only, no analytics. Ehlers is up 44 goals, down 22, plus 22 at 5-on-5. Kyle Connor's plus 1 at 5-on-5. That's a huge gulf. But I think that there's a consistency element and a real live human being element where, you know, if Connor doesn't make the giveaway that makes you have like just a reaction on the bench or on the ice, he's not going to give you that much anxiety and not feel like a player you have to manage, even if he's not winning all of his puck battles or all of those other sorts of things. So in this situation where Winnipeg has a lot of great players to choose from, both Connor and Ehlers included in that, they're very high quality players. I think that emotions might be getting in the way of production. That's my opinion on how all of this is going. And certainly I wrote to that effect this week.
You know, okay, so final question for you. Were you in the scrum last night after the game?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark was asked, you know, and obviously, I mean, credit to Mark. I mean, 700 points, great moment, being saluted by the fans. I thought he kind of soaked it in. It was an awesome moment at the rink. Kyle Connor's been a big part of his success. And he was asked about playing with Kyle Connor, and he, I mean, he was gushing over the guy. I mean, what did you think when you heard that? What were you thinking when Mark was the platitudes for a guy that he's been riding shotgun with for a good portion of those 700 points in the NHL?
Yeah, my response. I'll be diplomatic by starting in a different spot. I loved that interaction between the fans and Scheifele when he was honored inside the building. That was special, and I think should be acknowledged. That wave, it looked heartfelt, and I love seeing those moments. And I can't not say that. I think that was great, and what a player. His answer with respect to Kyle Connor reminds me of conversations I've had with him in the past as well about Kyle Connor and about Gabriel Velarde. When Mark Scheifele describes the type of player that he admires, it's a consistent player, someone who he knows where he's going to be at all times, somebody who jumps into the spaces at the right times, somebody, I mean, who gets essentially onto the end of Mark Scheifele passes and buries them like Kyle Connor did last night and has done so many times. I think Mark Scheifele wears his heart on his sleeve in those moments. And I think that it's fair to interpret that Kyle Connor is one of, if not the favorite line mate that Mark Scheifele has available to him. And I remember talking to Scheifele earlier in this year about the things that make Gabriel Vilardi great. And it was the same type of effusive praise. And I think that he genuinely prefers players of that type of skill set. And I don't think he's necessarily calling all the shots. There's a head coach in that chair for a reason. But I think that it is fair to infer Mark Scheifele has preferences about who he plays with, and Kyle Connor's number one on that list.
If there was any question about who Scheifele's guy is, we heard it last night. And you know, and a lot of the ways that he said it about how, you know, he always knows where he's going to be. I mean, listen, for me, it was hard not to listen to that in the context of the bigger conversation of what we've been talking about. And I will say, I got thinking about Rick Bowness. And I mean, that is a difficult spot for a coach to be in. And, you know, you could just say, hey, I'm the coach, I'll slam it down. But there's a lot of personalities involved. I remember asking Paul Maurice one time off air. I was just having a chat with him. And I said, hey, coach, I got to ask you a question. Coaching in the National Hockey League, what percentage of it would you say is X's and O's? And what percentage would you say is being like a psychologist, like a sports psychologist and human resources, if you will? And he said, you know, at times it could be 70% to the latter. And I mean, to me, that is a big question about trying to, I mean, like, I firmly believe that they would love to have Ehlers click with those guys on the second line and really drive it. I mean, the goal is to have two lines that are going, that are deadly when they're out there at all times. But it's almost impossible to ignore the fact that I think this is a lot of personal preference for a guy that sort of is in a lot of ways the franchise and is a guy that's going to be tasked with some very, very heavy lifting and wanting him to be comfortable and in the right place.
I think that's a fair interpretation. Mark Scheifele is going to be a Winnipeg Jet for a lot longer than Rick Bowness is going to be a Winnipeg Jet. And he's an important figure. You know, perhaps Winnipeg's best forward. I think that's fair to say. Most consistent in a lot of ways, can do things that other players can't. Signed for the longest duration. This is an important player, a pivotal person in Winnipeg's franchise. And I would imagine that there's a certain element that making sure that Mark Scheifele is comfortable and feels like he's playing his best is one of the important things that the coach can do. So there is a little bit of that. And, you know, whenever we put this type of question to a player, they're like, no, we're not the coach. We don't make these types of decisions, obviously. But no, behind the scenes, those conversations absolutely do happen. Has it happened here? I can't say that with anything definitive. But I remember, you know, Blake Wheeler famously said, give me the kid, when Kyle Connor broke into the league in 2017-18 on a full-time basis. That's reported by Eric Duhacek in The Athletic, and that's a message from the captain to the coach that was heated and was the launch of a really bright career in Kyle Connor's case. And this is the sort of thing that does happen, and I've heard of other examples with other players and other teams where that's a very real consideration. So do I believe that that's one of the strong possibilities here? Absolutely, I do. Can I say that I know that? No, absolutely, I can't. That's as far as I've got it at the moment.
Murat, I can't thank you enough. I kept you way long, and Pat wasn't available. You jumped in early, and this is, I mean, an awesome conversation with everything going on around the league as well as last night. I know you and your colleagues at The Athletic are going to be working overtime over the next few days with everything happening around the league. If you can, or if you'd like to, just kind of tee up what hockey fans can look forward to from yourself as well as the rest of the team as we get closer to Friday afternoon.
Well, it covers some of the themes that we talked about today, Huss, but like 10 minutes ago while we were chatting, my latest piece went live at The Athletic. It's what a perfect Winnipeg Jets trade deadline would look like. So within the rules of the Jets and the lines that they have, who would be these perfect fits? What do I think about Alex Tuch, or perhaps a Tyler Toffoli, who actually makes a little bit more sense to me as a fit? What kind of defenseman might be available? I wrote that. That went live as we were talking, so I hope fans will get out and read that. The other thing I want to say, I mean, I should be pitching myself right now and the things that I've written and will write. I hope that there's a story right now that means a lot to me for a reason I can't explain. And we're talking about the trade deadline and Winnipeg's success this season and the idea the Jets have over $5 million in room to add contracts right now. That does not happen unless in the year 2022, Brian Little, who knows he's not playing again as far as his medical advice has been given to him, waives his no trade clause to be traded to the Arizona Coyotes. And if Winnipeg was in a long-term injured reserve scenario, they wouldn't be building cap space. They wouldn't have done it last year. Those moves are harder to make. They wouldn't be doing it this year. The Monahan move is harder to make. Whatever they're about to do is harder to do. And it just, like, I don't know why this gets me so much, but I'm darn right emotional about it, where a player who knows he skated for the Winnipeg Jets for the last time signs off on this trade to give his team a better chance to win in the future. I love that story. And I don't know why I love it this much that I'm almost crying, but like that for me is a sense of sacrifice or putting the greater good above yourself or something that just resonates with me. And I can't leave this show before the trade deadline without highlighting Brian Little's continued gifts to the Winnipeg Jets.
You know what? Listen, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, Brian Little, I have so much respect. I mean, just from a fan, he was an absolute fan favorite. He was exactly what you'd want in a player, in a teammate, in a guy in the community. And I just can't wait till this contract is over and he can officially retire and kind of be back officially within part of the Winnipeg Jets family and the Jets community and all that. And it is a very important note to make because a lot of the things the Jets are able to do right now is because of that deal that had Brian Little officially being moved to the Phoenix Coyotes, the Arizona Coyotes. But he will always be a Winnipeg Jet. And at the soonest possible time, I think he'll be recognized as such. Murat, thank you again so much. We're going to be firing it up extra long on Friday. If you want to pop in with any takes or anything like that, we've always got a spot for you. But again, everyone in chat is echoing my thanks to you. You're a star on this show for many reasons, but thanks again for doing this. This was a lot of fun today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Good stuff. There's Murat. Well, you heard it's live. I'd like you to finish watching the show, but as soon as we're done, get over to The Athletic and watch that piece on what a perfect trade deadline would look like from Murat Ates. All right, we're going to get back to it. We will talk a little bit more about last night's game. I got to get Connor in here in a minute. But I do want to remind you, and again, we'll talk a little bit about the unfortunate situation in the arena last night with the Wi-Fi not working and many of the concessions not being able to work. I will tell you this though, I found out quickly how great that 25% season ticket holder discount when we're picking up beers, pop, sodas, and whatnot at the games. Because unfortunately we weren't able to do it last night. If you were lucky enough or felt the need to wait through some extra long lines to grab something to accompany yourself watching the game. Of course, the season ticket drive is on right now. I've had great response from a number of people involved in the Winnipeg Sports Talk Circle that have already done it. And of course, book their seats for the Stanley Cup playoffs. Go to winnipegjets.com/deposit. If you deposit on a package for next season, you can get priority access to playoff tickets, much like myself and other season ticket holders have. Cannot wait for the spring. But before the spring, we got to get to the weekend and through the trade deadline. Of course, we're not too far off between talking lots of Bombers. And of course, Princess Auto cannot wait to welcome Blue Bomber fans to Princess Auto Stadium coming up this year when the Bombers get at it. Princess Auto is also a huge supporter of curling in the province. I mean, they've been behind Team Jennifer Jones, and now we're all pulling for our Manitoba teams, including Princess Auto's Reed Carruthers, who's 4-1 right now. Right now, they're tied for second, I guess, technically with the Boccia rink in their pool. Northern Ontario, who Manitoba beat is one game or half game up, if you will, to use a baseball style term, 5-1 right now. Matty Dunstone representing Manitoba, 3-2 right now after his loss last night to Brendan Botcher. Of course, Princess Auto is not only a great sponsor of our teams and our curlers, but Winnipeg Sports Talk, but also the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them in store, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Thinking about the playoffs, I know there'll be a lot of Winnipeg Jet fans and WST listeners wanting to maybe get some new gear for the whiteout. You know where to do that. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, Winnipeg's true sports superstore for over 40 years, family owned in the Peg, with thousands of pieces of Winnipeg Jets merchandise, all the jerseys, with your favorite players, name numbers, done however you want them. Not to mention, hats, hoodies, Q-zips. They've got it all. Great Bombers section, NFL, Major League Baseball, and of course, for people that are playing the game, the biggest and best hockey section in town. Not to mention snowboards for spring break and all that cool stuff on the Kings skate, snow, and surf side. Pop by and see them, Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway, and make sure to follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And couple days with no Jets, but then we go Friday, Saturday night, late night, 9:30 starts. Can't think of a better time to get together with the gang at your local Boston Pizza to watch the game with sound on the big screen and enjoy some weekend ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, and gourmet pizzas. And heck, any day, 7 days a week, if you want to get it hot and fresh to your door, you can order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, we have went long with Murat, but there's so much going on today. Let's get Connor back in here. And Connor, I know you were listening to Murat, but you were also paying attention. Have we missed any trades over the course of the last 50 minutes or so?
Ooh, sorry, excuse me. You have missed a trade, but it's Alex Wenberg to the Rangers, and we aren't sure of the return yet. But the Rangers obviously have their top two centers, Mika Zibanejad and Vincent Trocheck. They were in the market for a third-line center, some depth up front. And Wenberg was being held out due to trade-related reasons over the last couple days. So he heads to New York. They get their 3C, and we'll wait to see what the return is. But that's all I've seen ever since Murat got on the program here.
So, if you want, I'm sure there's some people that jumped on a little later on. Do you want to, sorry, Sarah, we're hearing that, if you don't mind, take that off. If you can, Connor, let's just kind of quickly, why don't you give us a quick rundown of everything that we had heard from the deals that happened earlier on in today's flurry of activity heading into when we started the show.
So, yeah, I mean, where do we start? I mean, I think you got to start with the Colorado Avalanche and the fact that they went out and got Sean Walker for a first-round pick and Ryan Johansson, and then flipped and went and got Casey Middlestat for Bowen Byram. They're clearly the winners of the trade deadline so far, acquiring those two. Vladimir Tarasenko headed to the Florida Panthers was the first trade that was done today. Alex Wenberg heading to the Rangers, the most recent one. Nick Seeler signed an extension with the Philadelphia Flyers. You heard a lot of smoke around them and whether or not they were going to trade both, extend both. They end up trading Walker and extending Nick Seeler. And then to the Edmonton Oilers, Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick heading there for a first-round pick, and they brokered the contract through the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are going to retain 25% of Henrique's deal and receive a fourth-round pick. Outside of that, I think that's everything. I might be missing something. The chat can let me know. But from what I can tell, that is the majority of the moves today. Obviously, the Colorado Avalanche at the forefront, and a lot of moves to come.
Yeah, the Avs have been the big movers and shakers and kind of shaking things up when it comes to the Central Division right now. And part of the reason why we're only getting the last night's game now, for the most part, from our conversation right off the bat. Quick first up, I mean, what did you think of last night? I mean, there was some good I just thought they got real loose at times, and we haven't seen that many odd man rushes. I mean, Helly's been blessed. There hasn't been a lot of breakaways on him this year. That wasn't the case last night. And for all the good things the Jets did in one end, outshooting them, certainly having control of the play, gave a few up. And obviously, I mean, I think it's safe to say that Connor did not have one of his best games of the year. But if there's one guy that gets a mulligan on this squad, it's definitely 37.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, he's been fantastic this year. He's earned himself a few bad games here and there. Absolutely a lock for the Vezina Trophy. He's been great, but last night definitely not one of his best performances. That fourth goal, definitely one that he should have had. Maybe there was a screen on it, maybe not, but a shot from there, you expect Hrabchak to make the save. But outside of Connor Hrabchak, I thought the Jets played fine. Like, I thought they played great. I thought they controlled play, especially in the first period. They found themselves down 1-0, but I thought they had the majority of the shots, chances, things of that nature. And losses like that don't concern me at all. Like, the Jets won the 5-on-5, the analytics, things of that nature, and Connor Hrabchak let in a few goals, which, like you said, is okay. We're not here to call Connor Hrabchak a bust and that Thatcher Demko is now the leader for the Vezina or anything like that. But
Yeah,
I thought
no.
the third line played one of their best games of the season. I was looking at natural stat trick. The Corsi for them was 17-3 at 5-on-5, and they had a 92% expected goals percentage. And then obviously they had the 2 goals as well. Lowry scores at the end of the second, and Niederreiter scores to start the third. So I thought they had one of their best games of the year. Ehlers and Monahan still showing chemistry together. The top line giving a lot back, but Kyle Connor scores the goal, obviously. But yeah, I thought it was okay. And you play games like that, you're going to win more often than not, especially with Connor Hrabchak in net and an off night from him, and a team fighting for their playoff lives in the West. Like, Seattle's back in it now. I think they're tied with Vegas in games played and only 5 points back. So they're making a push, and the Jets ultimately were the less hungrier team.
Yeah, and you know, it is funny. I'm always so fired up to fire up the stats, the standings, and talk about the standings after the wins. Less so after the losses. And you look, and by the way, the freaking Sharks. Like, I went out after the game last night, and we had the Sharks game on. They're up 2-0, and then it's 2-2. I'm like, okay, it's not good. Then it's 3-2, 3-3. Then all of a sudden, 6-3 San Jose going into the third period. And they had a glorious chance, and they got a little fancy and didn't get it. And the next thing you know, it's 1, it's 2. That Kakinen was just brutal last night as well, flopping all over. And lo and behold, after beating the Sharks in an 8-round shootout on Saturday night, Dallas finds a way to get the 2 points in a game that, honestly, I mean, usually you're down 3 goals to any team in the NHL, you probably should lose. Jets did it against a great Carolina team. San Jose is certainly not of that caliber. But that was a little salt in the wound after what happened in the third period for the Winnipeg Jets. So Dallas right now is 2 points up on the Jets. The Jets still do, though, have 3 games in hand on Dallas. So in a very good position. Colorado is 2 points back of the Jets, and the Jets have 2 games in hand on the Avalanche. So, you know, despite the home loss last night in regulation, Jets still in a very, very good spot. But that Avalanche team that's lurking in third got significantly stronger today with that deal, with that trade, with Casey Middlestat coming for Bowen Byram, and of course Sean Walker coming over from the Philadelphia Flyers. And as far as the wild card goes, you mentioned the Seattle Kraken. And listen, I'm on record saying I still think it's going to be Vegas and Nashville with where they're at right now. But the Blues are 6 points back. So are the Kraken now after beating Calgary and the Jets on back-to-back nights. They do have 1 game in hand on Nashville, and the Preds blew a lead last night, and they gave up 2 goals in 6 seconds as well, which is bizarre. Anyways, they've got 6 points, but both the Kraken and the Flames actually have 2 games in hand on the Nashville Predators, but they're 8 points back. So, you know, Wild in a real tough spot. Calgary as well after that loss. It's just they're running out of runway right now with 20 games left. But this is going to make, I think, the Kraken an even more focused and hungry team feeling like they maybe have a shot if they can go on a run when the Jets play them coming up on Friday night, which is the next time we'll see Winnipeg in action.
Yeah, and Seattle's the kind of team like last season they went they won a playoff round. They beat Colorado in the first round. Like they're a young, hungry team, and they outscored their problems a season ago. This year, they haven't scored as many goals, but they're the kind of team that can get hot at any time. You saw Jared McCann score that shorthanded goal that was gorgeous in the Jets game on Tuesday night. He's a 40-goal scorer. Like, he's a guy that can get hot at the right time and will this team offensively to a few wins and making that wild card race even more interesting down the stretch. So they're definitely a team I'm watching for, as the Jets could end up playing them in the first round if the stars align in a certain way. And yeah, Vegas is definitely a team to watch as well, because even though Jack Eichel came back, they're starting to slide big time and find themselves in a wild card spot. LA's turned their season around. They're back in a actual playoff spot. I think they'd be playing Edmonton right now if the playoffs started today. So a lot of seeding going on there in the Western Conference. A team like Seattle that could jump in. Calgary sellers at the deadline, probably not going to be contending for a playoff spot, but they just won 5 straight. And Nashville, yeah, that game was crazy. I caught a bit of it, and I saw David Savard score a goal from center ice that went off the stanchion and into the net, which is, it's always fun to see goals like that. It's just so random. Only when it happens to other teams, not the Jets. But
well,
crazy.
I think that's partially because we had the Preds in regulation on our lock shot partner parlay and everything else right last night. It had to. It's been we were cursed last night in many different ways. Let's hear a little bit though from last night's game, and we'll start off with the coach, Rick Bowness. Listen, Bones right off the bat mentioned that that was there's losses, but that one was particularly frustrating to the guy on the bench.
That's a frustrating loss. We certainly weren't at our best. Then when you make it 3-2 like that early, and then we give up that goal, that was frustrating. And to give up the penalty kill goal is a little frustrating. And then we had a great opportunity with the goalie out, and the guy makes an incredible save. So give him credit on that big save and coming up big at a big moment. So yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, Adam talked about you guys needed to make some tweaks. I would think it had a lot to do with the odd man rushes that you were giving them tonight. Not very characteristic.
No.
What was going wrong?
We were just making the D were pinching when they shouldn't have been going down. The forwards were too slow coming above and protecting the middle of the ice. We're very good at protecting the middle of the ice. So anytime you see somebody skating down the middle of the, we're out of position or we're too slow reacting. And even that one rush early, like we had both of our D outside the dots. We never ever do that. So that's adds to the frustration that you get away from your game against a speedy team, and they're going to make you look like that.
All right, so there's Bones' thoughts on the game, and certainly was frustrated. And Connor, as he mentioned, I mean, to get the go-ahead goal, the second goal, I mean, in a minute and a half, if you kind of take out the intermission, because Lowry scored right at the end, a big boost going into the break. They get that one early, and it seems like they're off to the races. And listen, I didn't like the last goal on Helly. We talked about it before. But, I mean, you want to talk about a world-class deflection by Thomas Tatar. I mean, certainly that one wasn't on the goaltender. It just absolutely perfect. And next thing you know, it's a tie game, and Seattle's feeling like they are right back in this one.
And that's the kind of goal you just kind of shrug your shoulders at and go, oh, well. You can't really do much about that. That was a ridiculous deflection. From where I sit in the press box, I was almost perfectly on an angle of where that shot was coming from and how he deflected it into the net. It looked like it was going way wide. And he reaches around, like he contorts his body and deflects it past Hrabchak. A crazy, crazy deflection to tie that game. And then, yeah, the fourth goal, we talked about it. We don't like it. But, hey, what are you going to do? Seattle's a hungry team. They're a team, like I said, can get hot at the right time. They have a lot of players like Thomas Tatar who are good middle six scoring options. That's why a lot of teams are in on him. Jordan Eberle, Alex Wenberg was just traded. They have a lot of players like that who can get hot in a hurry and score a lot of goals for them. So that was just another example of Seattle getting hot at the right time against on the second night of a back-to-back. I mean, I think Kevin Sawyer brought up on the broadcast that the Kraken got into Winnipeg at 3 a.m. last night, and they
Yeah.
still found a way to win. Like they're a hungry team right now, and they can get hot at the right time.
Well, they're not quitting, that's for sure, and full marks to them for getting that win. I mean, we talked about the Jets, who were 6-0 in the second end of back-to-backs. We've shown that it's certainly not impossible to win those games that many will call schedule losses, but full marks to them. Let's hear a little bit more from Bones. Bones followed up on, talking about the frustration of the loss by mentioning that as much as his team did have a lot of puck possession and was in the offensive zone quite a bit, didn't think they did as much as they could have with those opportunities.
We spent a lot of time in their zone. We didn't do enough with it. We didn't generate enough opportunities from that. We need to generate more. There was rebounds that we didn't get to that they got to. So it's that finding those the puck retrievals that's got to get better as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of chaos at times in front of Joey Decord, and were not able to poke that in and maybe extend the lead when they had the opportunity. Bones was also asked about the upcoming trade deadline, certainly on the thoughts of not just fans, but everyone inside the organization. I'm sure the players too. And I was asked if we could see a different looking team by the time this team drops the puck with the Kraken again, this time on the West Coast late Friday night.
Look, we've had a good year. We're a very good hockey team. We are. We're legitimate, so things will take care of themselves over the next couple of days. But we like our team. We've had a great year so far, and we're hopefully the best hockey's ahead of us.
That is the plan. One more clip from Bones coming up, and we're talking so much about big acquisitions. The Jets have already made one. They did it well in advance of the deadline, and it has been paying dividends. You can tell Bones is a big Sean Monahan guy. Here he is talking about what a fit he's been for his hockey club.
He's been a perfect fit for exactly what we needed for that second line center. The ability to he can play against anybody. He's very, very reliable defensively. He wins a lot of key faceoffs, important part of both specialty teams, and he's made that second line what you need. You're not going to win the Stanley Cup with one line. You need a couple of lines, and he gives us that. He gives us that ability to have two really good lines, and obviously Adam's line is going to do their thing no matter what. So he has been an absolute perfect fit.
And new city, new systems. He didn't know hardly anybody here. He says it's kind of unusual for it to click that well, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he was in Calgary all those years, then he was in Montreal, and yeah, it's one of those things. But he's been a perfect fit.
Now, Connor, I guess the question is, will there be another addition to pop in that top six, along with Sean Monahan and presumably Nikolai Ehlers, to help the Jets compete with the beefed up Avalanche, Dallas Stars, and the rest of the teams in the Western Conference playoff picture?
Yeah, and that would be the spot, right? Alex Iafallo is currently there. Cole Perfetti was up in that top six to start the year, but he's fallen down to the fourth line, big slump. So I think that would be the spot they're looking to add. You heard Murat bring up a bunch of right-handed options. One on the Kraken that's a pending UFA is Jordan Eberle. Alex Tuck, he brought up Tyler Toffoli. These are all top six wingers that are a right-handed shot and would fit well on that line with Monahan and Ehlers. But further to Bones' comment there, Monahan has been a perfect fit. Credit to the Jets pro scouting department for identifying the fact that he can really help them in the bumper. He is a great forechecker, which is what the Jets pride themselves on, is disrupting pucks in the offensive zone and knocking down pucks, forechecking. That's why they brought in Alex Iafallo. Gabriel Velarde does that as well. And Sean Monahan has been a great fit in that sense as well. So credit to the Jets. And yeah, he's got 8 goals in, I think, 13 games so far. So you couldn't have asked for a better start from Sean Monahan, and maybe he'll get some help on his line over the next 48 hours.
Yeah, well, we'll be all over it here on WST again, starting early on Friday. And if it's light, if there's not a lot happening, Remus did just pick up a hobby box of the new Upper Deck. So we'll crack a few packs, see if we can get there's $1 million bounty on the 1-of-1 gold Bedard Young Guns. Imagine if that would be like just opening a winning lottery ticket live on the air. Wouldn't that be something? We'll have a few tickets in that box when we crack them on Friday.
Yeah, and I know Remus was inspired by the conversation you guys had with Al's brother and the hockey
For
cards
sure.
that just sold for 3 million or 4 million USD. So yeah, definitely an inspiration there, and I'm looking forward to that.
But yeah, $1 million bounty by some breakers for the one of one Connor Bedard. So we'll see if anyone wants to pay more than that, but that is out there right now. Anyways, a monster game by the Lowry line last night, led by the captain. He had here's what he had to say about scoring those 2 quick goals on the opposite ends of the second intermission. But after taking the lead, giving it back.
Thought it was a good start, and then maybe not a great response. It's one of those things. We were able to score right after kind of they went up 2-1 and to go into the room 2-2. You know, we liked our spot. We knew they got late and travel. I think we score early in the third, and you know we like our chances. You know, credit to them. That's a gutsy win. They battled back, and you know they were able to get one late. You know, it's too bad. I felt like, you know, for the most part, you know, we had a lot of good looks, some chances that didn't fall for us. You know, some minor tweaks to our game, and you know we'll be ready for them on Friday.
Adam Lowry on the game last night. Of course, had to ask Adam about his longtime teammate Mark Scheifele hitting the 700-point milestone in the National Hockey League. Adam reminisced a little bit and you know, talked about the incredible accomplishment of number 55.
Just incredible. I think, you know, the organization's so fortunate that we've been able to, you know, kind of witness his greatness. I think, you know, watching his maturation, kind of his growth coming in from, you know, an 18-year-old kid. And you know, I still remember he lit that exhibition on fire, and everyone wanted him, you know, to be on the team. And he went back to junior, and little did we know bigger things were to come for him. You know, he's such an important piece of our team. He's such an important piece in our room and piece in the community, I think. Yeah, you know, kind of the work he puts in day to day, the way he helps take care of his teammates, you know, kind of helping them with their game. The stuff he does behind the scenes that I don't think a lot of people know. He's so invaluable to our team, and you know, it was nice to see him hit that milestone. I think, you know, pretty soon, you know, he's going to come up on 1,000. You know, he's got a lot of games left, you know, a lot of years. So, you know, just been really lucky to be his teammate for so long.
Yeah, 7 more years starting next season with that extension that he signed, as well as his teammate Connor Hrabchak on that memorable Thanksgiving here in Winnipeg back in October. One more from Lowry. Listen, you know, this team has shown, you know, a lot of fortitude, particularly in that crazy comeback against the Canes, the way they played for a full 60 against Buffalo, and even coming back yesterday, although they weren't able to finish the job. Lowry kind of talked about his line, but as well as the team's ability to apply pressure when they're down and get back in games as they've done over the past week.
You know, I think it's just responses to different things in the game. You know, we go out and they've just scored a goal, so you want to at least get the momentum kind of swinging back in your favor, maybe get the crowd back into it. You know, it'd always be nice to be able to go out and score the next shift after, you know, your team scores on you, or your team scores and you can get another one. But I think it's just about, you know, our line trying to get in on the forecheck, trying to create some pressure, kind of just turn the tide, maybe get no offensive zone face-off. And, you know, fortunately, it was a heck of a pass by Appy, and I was able to find the back of the net for once. So, but I think for our team as a whole, you know, we always talk about, you know, the responses, solutions, not excuses. I think, you know, we look at that Carolina game, and you know, we felt we were playing better than kind of the score 3-0, and you know, rather than fold the tent and get ready for Buffalo the next day. You know, we have a good start to the third period. Casey gets the one, and you know, there's not a lot of quit. We look at, you know, the Buffalo game, we felt like we were playing pretty well, and we come out and we were able to grind that one out on a back-to-back. And even here, you know, they score the late one, but you know, we don't fold. We draw a penalty. We're on the power play. We have a couple great looks. So, you know, I think that's the belief in our structure. That's the belief in our team that, you know, regardless of what happens, you know, we're able to respond. We're in the game no matter what.
All right, so there's the captain, Adam Lowry, and Connor, Nino's been scoring in bunches. I mean, he's gone, a long periods of time without scoring. I think he's got 4 in his last 3 games right now. And it had been a minute since Lowry had bulged the twine. But I'll tell you what, if that line, and again, credit to Mason Appleton. He had a monster game yesterday as well. 2 really nice primary assists on Appleton and Lowry's goal. That line getting back to where they were at the beginning of the season and producing as well. A huge part of this team's success, regardless of what happens at the deadline or who else is in the lineup, because they're going to be getting their fair share of time and the toughest matchups that Rick Bowness can find for them.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with that line, when the Jets had their 5-game losing streak and, they had their major goal scoring slump and the third line was at the center of that, they were still playing great defense. Like, they're still providing a shutdown aspect to their line. And Rick Bowness, has found trust in that line. They've been insanely consistent all season long. The start of the year and now they're starting to score and score at maybe a rate that's unsustainable in a way, but at the absolute minimum, even if they're not scoring, they're still a shutdown line. And if they're able to add kind of that secondary scoring punch, I know they're the third line, so there's even a line theoretically ahead of them that could add even more of a scoring punch. But if Niederreiter can get hot in the playoffs at the right time and Lowry can chip in goals here and there, he scored the biggest goal for the Jets in the playoffs last year, that tying goal against Vegas in Game 3. And then can Mason Appleton be a good forechecker and a good facilitator, as he has shown at times this season? That line's going to be a huge reason for success in the playoffs if they can get hot. But even if they're not, they can be at minimum a shutdown line, and Rick Bowness finds a lot of value in that. And last night, you saw the best version of that third line maybe we've seen all season long.
I have to ask you, as someone much younger than me that sort of grew up watching Mark Scheifele's entire career here, as most of us have, but it was really cool to be in the building last night. It was too bad they couldn't have finished it off with a win on that night, but 700 points is a real significant milestone. I agree with Adam Lowry. We'll be talking about Scheifele 1,000 in both games played and points for the Winnipeg Jets at some point in the future. But it was cool to be in the building and be able to recognize everything that he's done since starting here after being the Jets' first ever draft pick.
Yeah, that was a really cool moment. I mean, you said it right there, first ever draft pick. He's been alternate captain for a bunch of years now and has committed his entire career to the city of Winnipeg. And I think the fans in the building recognize that he just signed here long-term and he's the first ever draft pick. He's going to be a Jet for life, and all of the points, all 700 and all when he hits 1,000 and 1,000 games played, that's all going to come in a Winnipeg Jets jersey. And that means something to the people in that building. And it was a really cool moment to see. And you could see Scheifele appreciated it. Lowry's quote I thought was gold in the post game on Scheifele and playing with him his whole career as someone who was in the same draft class and is also a part of the leadership team. But yeah, that was a really cool moment, and I'm glad I was in the building for it.
Here's Scheifele just speaking post game about reaching that milestone last night at 700.
Obviously it's a good feeling. Very, very blessed to play with some really good players over the years, and obviously just hope and pray for more. But obviously it's a very humbling thing, and obviously excited and proud, and lots more work to do.
All right, so again, a little subdued because of the fact that they weren't able to get the win, but that was certainly not lost on everybody in the building last night. This is the clip, though, I was talking about with Murat. And it was, listen, this is definitely a bromance. And Mark Scheifele loves him some Kyle Connor. And he was asked about playing with KFC last night on the night that he scored 700, knowing that number 81 had been such a part of getting to that point.
He's fantastic. He's an unbelievable player. He's I love playing with him. He's a guy that loves the game and loves to work at it, and is always in the right spot. There's not many times that I can count during a game when he's not exactly where I know he's going to be, and he's an absolutely fantastic player.
Yeah, and he also scores a lot of goals, which he did again last night. And listen, there's been a lot of interesting discourse and great debates on what the best setup of the Jets, but when it comes to that top six and who's playing with Mark on that top line. But as we kind of talked about with Murat, it's very clear that if Mark Scheifele has any influence in it whatsoever, he wants to be riding with number 81.
Yeah, and that goal, I mean, was just the kind of the epitome of like what Scheifele's talking about there, what we've talked about, that Kyle Connor's been stapled to Mark Scheifele's hip for all this time. Scheifele takes 2 strides over the blue line, looks like a nothing play. There's 3 Kraken defenders back. He snaps a pass over to Kyle Connor, and within half a second, it's on his stick, off his stick, and past Joey Decord. Like, that was an unbelievable play. It came out of nowhere, and it speaks to, he had the quote in there saying, I always know where he's going to be. There's not many times in a game where I don't know where he is. That's one of the moments, like right there, you see it. He steps over the blue line. He knows exactly that Kyle Connor's streaking down that left side, hits him right on the tape, and that's just a sign of players who have played together for a long time. Showing chemistry and knowing where each other are on the ice at all times, and heck of a release from Kyle Connor as well.
It was such a wild goal because first of all, the job that Vlad did to not go offside was impressive. And I'm going to give Neil Pionk credit on that one. Pionk started the entire play by giving the puck away, which is not how you want to start an attack. But he was on it, turned around, got the puck right back. And as he's been doing it, if you've watched him, he did this a couple times on the weekend, gets the puck in some sort of a puck battle and immediately turns it around the other way. And if there was a third assist on it, it would have gone to Pionk. Obviously doesn't end up on the score sheet, but he sort of started that play, and we know Kyle Connor finished. So it is on to Seattle Friday night for the Winnipeg Jets after a 4-3 loss last night. But what's going to be dominating this program tomorrow as well as Friday is going to be the NHL Trade Deadline. Listen, we're going to get to the cool bet lines in a minute. I know people wanted to, and I'm almost happy that there was so much happening at the start of the show. We didn't need to go on about the malfunction at the junction last night. But I can tell you, and Remus will confirm this tomorrow, my take about places should be accepting cash, he's now come over to my side on this after last night. Listen, really unfortunate. I guess and again, like, I don't know how all these things, I've had, a bunch of people kind of reach out that, maybe they'll certainly there needs to be a better backup plan. And I think that will be the case in the future, but I'll give the people their credit. Listen, it was probably tough sledding for everyone that was at one of the concessions that was available. Certainly it was really long lines. The Jets app wasn't working. So, I mean, it was not an ideal situation. And listen, this was not something that was planned or even known in advance, because I spoke with a number of people in concessions that really were finding it out kind of in real time as fans were getting there. We're all there ready to work. I mean, it would have, listen, I don't know what the final dollar value of a malfunction like that is, but there was tons of lost sales, first and foremost, not to mention paying a whole bunch of workers to basically stand there and hope that this was going to be coming back. So I know True North, as someone that went to the game last night, I got an email from them apologizing for everything that happened last night. And it was too bad. I mean, we had Norva Riddell in the program, what was it, 1 or 2 weeks ago? Last night was the Women in Sport night, and they were recognizing all the females that are a big part of the True North team, as well as, a bunch of other women in sport, the Manitobans in the PWHL. And in the third period, I think, was it third period or second period, there was a moment in a timeout where they had all of the women from the organization there together. And, unfortunately, Norva wasn't there. And I mean, listen, Norva has been working in sports. She was a client of mine early in the late 90s and has probably been with that organization, well, I would say for sure, well in excess of 20 years, in a very high level, has done so much. She's sort of what so many of these young women, I think, look up to. She wasn't out there for that because she was up along with Lindsey Jones handing out popcorn and stuff to fans, kind of taking it and, apologizing and trying to make the best of a very bad situation. So I feel vindicated on the cash take, because I think a lot of that would have been, well, it's certainly you listen, you would have had some people, you would have had a big lineup at a bank machine, but at least the show would have been able to go on a little bit better. But listen, credit to them. There's a lot of free stuff that was given out to people. Would have been nice if they just said, we're going to drain all the kegs in the building. It certainly would have been louder in the third period if they had done that as well. But anyways, I mean, to all the women of True North, it was great to see them celebrated. And, I do give credit to, I don't know what was happening kind of in the other end of the building, but where we're at over in that area, closest to Graham, there was a bunch of the staff doing everything they could to try to take care of fans the best they could, because the technology failed them last night. And I'm sure there'll be a follow-up at some point to make sure that doesn't happen. But listen, this is not the first time that's happened as well. The Bombers were the first one to go cashless. And I remember sitting down and we got into the show, and everyone was so pumped about the Bombers beating the Riders to go back to the Grey Cup in that game, and so cold it was in December. But I also remember a bunch of the concessions not working and not being able to take cash. So we need to, everyone needs to have a couple 20s in their pocket just in case. And the teams need to have a plan so that, you can still grab your hot dog, your pop, whatever you're normally going to do when things like that happen. But it was a first. Hopefully it'll be a first and only moving forward. And everyone, I think, still, if the Jets won, no one would care today after that. But was certainly an inconvenience for a lot of people. But if you're at the game last night, I mean, you sure certainly already got that letter kind of explaining and apologizing for what happened. All right, listen, just before we go, cool bet lines today. Quieter night in the National Hockey League after such a busy one last night. Sabres and Leafs are going at it in Toronto. Wasn't it Buffalo whooped them 9-2 last time they played? I'm certainly not going to lay down a big one on Buffalo. I will take the over, though, tonight. I think I'm going to throw that out for the cool bet play of the day a little later on. Over 6.5, but Buffalo's plus 153. The Leafs minus 181. You got the Avalanche. That'll be an interesting game to tune into, just to talk about and hear all the talk about the deals that have been made. I'm not sure whether any of the acquisitions will be able to be in the lineup tonight. I guess we'll find out. Minus 183 for the Avs. Nate McKinnon's so hot. Minus 126 for him to score tonight. Gives you an idea about how nuclear he's going these days. Wings holding on to their playoff spot, plus 154 on the road. And then the final game is the Ottawa Senators and the Anaheim Ducks. Don't think anyone's going to be staying up late for that one. The Ottawa, significant favorite, and even money on the money line. If you check the Coolbet exclusives, got a whole bunch up for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Dusty, Pat, and myself got into that today on the Lock Shop before we sort of broke early. We like Vic Hovland, but check that out as well as all the exclusives. And if you'd like, join us tomorrow in the Lock Shop as we get ready for another big slate in the National Hockey League. Connor, great stuff today. Thanks again for jumping in while Remo was away. And we'll look forward to having you join us for what should be a bit of a marathon shift, a third anniversary show on the trade deadline. I feel a little bit like James Duthie. I hope that there's still some more to happen on Friday because today, as you mentioned right off the hop, it sort of felt like deadline day today in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, it was a wild day, and I'm sure there's more to come later today, so I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. Thanks for having me back on. I'm really looking forward to Friday. And as Murat ended it off, I feel that I have to bring up the fact that he brought up Brian Little. I remember when the Jets moved back to Winnipeg in 2011 and trying to decide who I should put on my first jersey. And you mentioned him as a fan favorite. He was my first Jets jersey. He'll always have a special place in my Jets fandom heart. And him bringing that up is a great point. I mean, without him waving that, the Jets don't have the ability to do what they do. It's a sign of sacrifice. And I feel I had to mention that before we went, because I think that was my favorite part of the show today was Murat.
Listen, I'll never forget the horrible incident that was unfortunately the last time we saw Brian Little play in the National Hockey League against the New Jersey Devils. He was a fan favorite from day one to his final day. He'll still stay that way. Notice how you don't see anybody wearing number 18 for the Winnipeg Jets. I don't think that's changing anytime soon. So the sooner the better we can kind of officially get Brian Little back in the fold. But let's not forget Brian Little, and great stuff from Murat as always. We can't thank him enough for his contributions to the show. And I'll be honest, I can't wait. As soon as I'm done this show, I'm going to head over to The Athletic and read Murat's perfect trade deadline scenarios for the Winnipeg Jets. It'll get us all fired up for the next couple days. But Connor, thanks again. And I'm looking forward to doing this again with you Friday when you join myself, Michael, for an extended program with the latest. And you can be on the first ever WST trade desk with an actual correspondent. You'll be there, and we'll get to all of it. So it should be fun.
It'll be like on TSN Trade Center when they have James Duthie on the regular desk, and then they cut to the insiders, and the insiders are like, I'm hearing that Jake Gensel is being traded to the Vancouver Canucks. I'll fill that role.
Yeah, and O-Dog eating a hot dog in the back and whatnot. Anyways, it's going to be real fun.
Exactly.
We're planning on going live at 11 on Friday. So join us then for that, but make sure to join us tomorrow because I have a feeling we'll have some more deals to come to discuss tomorrow. Kyle Dubas said he wants to complete the Jake Gensel deal by tonight. So needless to say, we'll have lots to get to, as well as the latest from the Jets as they get back to practice. A big thanks to Sarah, who helped us navigate a day without Michael Remus, doing a great job behind the scenes. Sarah, thank you so much for helping us out today. Connor, killing it as always. And, of course, our great friend Murat. Appreciate everyone joining in. Another massive show today. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And give us a thumbs up if you wouldn't mind. A big thanks to all the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day. And we'll get back at it tomorrow with a packed show with the latest on the deadline and the Jets as they head into the deadline and head to the West Coast to take on the Kraken, 9:30 on Friday, and then a late Hockey Night in Canada game against the first-place Vancouver Canucks on Saturday. For Connor Hrabchak and an absent Michael Remus, I'm Andrew Paterson. Thanks for hanging with us today, folks, and we'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock right here live on YouTube on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.